Today on Light of the Word with Pastor Ray.
You know, when we lean on our staff and let the whole world know, I leaned on Jesus to the end. And let this be our legacy. Our legacy is who our relationship is with the Son. Let the world know my legacy is that I leaned on Jesus Christ, and everything about me came down to one thing. Everything about you comes down to one thing: Jesus Christ.
Open your heart to us, Lord, so we can know your word. We come before you, Jesus. Speak to our hearts as we discover your love for us. How wide, how deep, how far. Pour into us so we can learn to follow. One surrender at a time. You have made the way for us to know you, a path that's straight and bright. By the light of the word.
We live in a world with status updates, what people are doing, where they've been, and what they're listening to. But have you ever considered what your life is communicating to others? Does it reflect a life focused on temporary material things? Or does it point to who you are following? In today's message, Pastor Ray encourages you to make Jesus more than just something you acknowledge publicly, but the foundation of your entire life. Let your walk, your words, and your decisions reflect Jesus Christ. Well, let's join Pastor Ray in the book of Genesis chapter 50 for today's edition of Light of the Word.
Verse 1 through 3, Then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. 40 days were required for him, for such are the days required for those who are embalmed, and the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. Historical writings and the likes show that it would take 40 days to embalm a body. It's a fascinating study. I'll spare you the details of it, of what it would do to embalm a body, but we actually have mummified bodies that, still you can see these type of things. So 40 days to embalm Jacob. Joseph will be embalmed here before we finish the chapter. 70 days of mourning. The historical writings would say 72 days was the days of mourning for a Pharaoh. So here is the elevation of Jacob, the mourning next to almost a Pharaoh. But here's the amazing thing about his life. He's being mourned not for what he was in Egypt. It's what his son was in Egypt. That's why all of Egypt mourns. It's for who his son is. And so, speaking of his son then, takes me to this amazing place as we're reading the end of this book and we look at the life of Joseph. We're going to see his last breath and his embalming before we finish here today. And what I just want to share with as we finish this book and we consider these things, there is no limit of what God can do in any one of our lives here. Especially you youth, I hope you can listen well on this. Here's Joseph. We've said this time and time again. Here's this young man, Joseph, 17 years old. He has no youth group. He had no children's church. He had no church at all. He had no counselors. He had no Bible. He had no Chuck tapes. If you going through our school discipleship, he had nothing. And yet he became the man that he became simply because he trusted in the promises of God. He held on to the promise of God, and he would not trade his relationship with the Lord, his God, for anything that the world had to offer. And I just want to share with all of you, and especially you youth, there is no limit to what God can do in your life. Absolutely not one. because Joseph is the proof text of what I can do through a life that's yielded to me. And as we say often, but it's such a great phrase, no man, government, or program can stop the work of God in your life. Only our disobedience and lack of faith. But God, in his ever great forgiveness, will do what he will do if we say, here I am. And as we move on with that, then verse 4 through 11, speaking of Jacob's legacy, it's based on the son that he had. Verse 4 through 11, now when the days of his mourning were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, if I have found favor in your eyes, please speak in the hearing of Pharaoh, saying, my father made me swear, saying, behold, I am dying in my grave, which I dug for myself in the land of Canaan. There you shall bury me. Now, therefore, please let me go and bury my father, and I will come back. And Pharaoh said, go up and bury your father as he made you swear. So Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went all the servants of Pharaoh. Just start imagining what this processional looks like. It's like when one of our presidents passes in the rotunda in the Capitol, and all the world comes to mourn. And the elders of the land of Egypt, verse 8, as well as the house of Joseph, his brothers, his father's house, only their little ones, their flocks and their herds they left in the land of Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen, and it was very great gathering. Then they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, and they mourned there with great and very solemn lamentations. He observed 7 days of mourning for his father. And when the inhabitants of the land of the Canaanites saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Atad, they said, this is deep mourning of the Egyptians. Therefore, his name was called Abel Mizam, which is beyond the Jordan. I love it. In this one thing, if you get down to it, and we'll see this as Joseph will talk about how God used this, and the brothers are going to fear in the next verses that once dad's dead, that Joseph's coming for revenge. And we know the story, what it took the Lord to do to get Joseph there to Egypt, and he saves the whole region. And here we see God bringing this place, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, this burial place in Machpelah, and all the world of that surrounding area, all the Egyptians are watching going, what is this? Look at this procession that's leaving Egypt to go up to this burial place. And they would all start talking, going, what is this? And they go, Joseph's dad has died. And then all the Canaanites, they haven't seen this family for 17 years now. And they're going to see this great procession coming in with chariots and horses and droves of people and mourning and weeping. And all the Canaanites would look and go, what is this? And they would go, Joseph in Egypt, his father has died. And everybody would know Joseph. All of Egypt would know. Remember the famine? Not one of us would be alive if it wasn't for Joseph. And then everyone in Canaan during the famine, because we saw the children of Israel had to come to Egypt to get the food. And they would go, this is the father of he who saved all of our lives. And they would all be watching this great procession. But the point that's so fascinating to me, Jacob's legacy at this moment, at this time, it's about who his son is. It's not about who he is. All of Egypt and all Canaan witnessed because his son was Joseph. And there again, leaning on the staff, and there again, what a beautiful picture for us. You know, when we lean on our staff and let the whole world know, I leaned on Jesus to the end. And let this be our legacy. Our legacy is who our relationship is with the Son. Let the world know my legacy is that I leaned on Jesus Christ, and everything about me came down to one thing. Everything about you comes down to one thing, Jesus Christ and him crucified, the rescuer, and what he's done. And if you're looking at this procession, the power of the procession, which is amazing, is Machpelah, as we studied, it means double door. And that's why Abraham, the only purchase he made was this cave in Machpelah, because he believed the promise of God. The death doesn't end here on this dirt. Death may be a cave, a tomb that we go into, but there's a door on the way out, and it's the resurrected life. And they made that witness as people would go, man, you lived in tents and you were a nomad and you just wandered through the land, except that one place, that one piece of property that you would spend your money on. And it's this cave. And it was Abraham, Isaac, and now Jacob is making the procession of that he would say, make sure I'm buried. Egypt's not my home. Bury me in the land that was promised to our fathers and promised to us all the way through all the generations to be had, and let all the world know every time they would come and go, man, these people, they believe there is life on the other side of this life here on this earth. And atad is the word threshing floor, which is a fascinating weaving that God weaves together, because a threshing floor was where you would beat the seed out of the husk. And I know, the wheat threshing, that was easy as we would study. They'd put a sled and they'd break it up and they'd throw it up into the wind, and the wind would blow the chaff and the grain of wheat would fall. I had no idea how much harder it is for rice. When I was in Nepal and I would watch people just to beat the rice out of the stalk, and I go, whew, that's a lot of work. But then the next morning, because I'm watching them beat, I go, man, that is work. They sit there and they beat it and they beat it and they beat it. Then they take and bag it. And then I go, whew. And then the next morning, there they are, the women. They got these 20, 30-pound sacks of rice on their shoulder, and they're walking. And I said to the husband, I go, where are they going? Oh, well, now they have to go and take it down to such and such, because that's where they break the seed out of the husk, the hull. And then I went and I looked at the stalk and I go, I never noticed that in all my life. I just thought the grain fell. What did I know? An American. I go in, go an American, walk through the store, buy 30 pounds of rice, whatever. But it has to be broken out of the husk to get the seed that can be eaten and that can sustain life. And here again, the pictures that God weaves for us of, man, we have to be broken apart from this husk of this body that we're in. But God broke through this body to open up for the life that's inside this husk in this hull to set us free. And here's the picture that's made as all the procession is made and everybody's looking of the threshing floor where we beat and break out the grain. And then Jesus would say, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground, life will not be produced. And they watch them come into Machpelah, the double doors, that there is more to death than entry. There is a resurrection and the way out. And yet we come and we just see all of his life, the end of his life. It's based on the son that he knew. Beautiful words. And now verse 12 through 13, 14. So his sons did for him just as he had commanded them, for his sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave in the field of Machpelah before Mamre, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite as property for a burial place. And after he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt, he and his brothers and all who went up with him to bury him. So as we're looking at the end of the life of Jacob, the best years of his life, or better said, the best chapters of Jacob's life have been the last two chapters that we just read. What an amazing, all of his faults and all of his failings and all these conniving and scheming. And here we see the man living up to his name, governed by God. And in the end of his life, he is seen, I'm just leaning on my staff. I'm leaning on the Son and the beauty of his life. And just as I would say at the beginning, God has a unique blessing for every last one of you. But I also want to say this, because it can become forgetful, especially the more we have failures and the more we find ourselves and the faults. are way less spiritual today than when you first got saved. And I say that as a cliche because you go, what? I've been walking with the Lord, man. I'm growing in the faith and these type of things. I tell you what, after 35 years, more and more and more, I realize just how flawed I am. When I first got saved, I thought there was that one or two things, but then all of a sudden, I got those big things, those big things. It was like the little boy, he was walking through the living room and he was whistling and snapping his finger at the same time. And his dad says, "What are you doing, son?" He goes, "Well, I think the two hardest things in life are whistling and snapping your finger. And if I can get these two things down, the rest of life is going to be a breeze." And, we get saved and then we see these couple big things in our life and go, when I get past this and I get it, the rest of life's going to be a breeze. And you all know what your one or two things were when you first gave your life to the Lord. But then all of a sudden you get over those things. Then all of a sudden you start looking in the mirror of God's word, and you start seeing how far short you fall in selfishness or pride or love and these type of things. And all of a sudden you start seeing more and more, Lord, I need you to work here. I need you to do a work and do these type of things in my life to transform me and bring me into this place. And I look at the life of Jacob there, and his best chapters, all of his faults and failing, at the very end of his life, he's just simply leaning on Jesus. He comes to this place, it's Jesus, it's God or nothing for me. And I want to say, your best chapters, they're now. And there's an easy place for us to look and start looking at the culmination of our failures, then the culmination of God's transformation and the glory that he's done in us, and go, Lord, my best chapters of my life can be now, and you've given me unique blessing, gifting. What is it and how do you want me to use it? And I just pray, what is it that I want to see God do in 2026? I usually ask the Lord, and he usually gives me a verse somewhere that is kind of a verse that I keep coming back to throughout the year and remembering the word that he gave me. I think just a beautiful word that he gave me this week was for 2026, Revelation chapter 1, verse 19. Right, the things that you have seen, the things which are, and the things that shall be. And in that, it unfolds through the rest of the book of Revelation. It's a divine outline. Write the things that you've seen. Speaking of the glorified Christ, walking in chapter 1. Write the things are, and it's God's work among the churches in chapter 2 and 3. And then write the things which will be in this prophetic picture of all the rest of the book of Revelation, all the way to the new heaven and the new earth of Revelation 21 and 22. And I said, that would be a great unfolding for a year. Spend my life, my year speaking. Let me tell you about Jesus Christ and what he did when he walked this earth, whether it's in the church, a mission field, a community, or a home. And then at the same, spend time. Let me tell you what God's doing today. His Spirit's alive. His Spirit's moving in the church in America and wants to move in your hearts and your lives. And then spend the time telling people he's coming back. And there's a new heaven and a new earth. But before that, there's going to be a rapture, and there's going to be a period of tribulation. What a way to spend the 2026. And I see these and I go, man, Lord, the best chapters can still be ahead of us. It may take sacrifice for you, and a willingness to say, to have my best chapter, Lord, I might have to do some dying, as we're seeing in this chapter, to the things around me and the things of my life. I was sharing this story with some of you who were in the prophecy update a couple weeks ago. But when I was in Nepal, I got the honor to teach the main service. They worship on Saturday. They work 6 days weeks. Sunday's the first day of the week for them, but I got the honor to do a Saturday service, and a couple missionaries were passing through. They established these various types of ministries throughout Asia and that area in the Middle East, kind of under radar type stuff. And they came up after because I was there. I was the American. They were Americans. We're in Nepal, and they came up, these two missionaries from Texas, and they started to talk to me. And they started telling me about how they train people up, and they place them in various ministries. Just a glorious. And this man, these two, their faith for 30 years of doing this type of ministry. But he tells me this story that just as our conversations are going, he goes, we train people, natives, and then we use them for the ministry throughout the various places there in this region of Asia and the Middle East. And he goes, so we trained, brought this young woman, a young adult now at her age, to Christ. We trained her up and we taught her the things of the Lord. She turned into this amazing light of the world. She had the zeal of the Lord and the joy of the Lord. And she was from Afghanistan. And where they were ministering, not to name the country, but the country came back and said, all Afghanis must leave our country. They can no longer stay in this country. And so her immediate directives would have been, you have to go back to Afghanistan. And if you know Afghanistan and you're a zeal of the Lord and the light of the world, you can lose your life in Afghanistan for being so outspoken. And this young adult was full on outspoken in her faith. And the missionary tells me, and he goes, so we said, it's very likely that she'll perish and die a martyr's death if she goes back to Afghanistan. So we started working to get her into the United States. We had a lot of connections and we had a lot of means to make this happen. This is a recent story, by the way. And all the things lined up that we could bring her to the United States, and she'd be a blessing and these type of things. And so she's like, sure, if that's okay, And then as things were lining up, the missionary tells me, he goes, then I said to her, I do have this great concern, is that if you come to the United States of America, that your zeal is going to go lukewarm, because you'll become like so many Americans in the church, and you'll just grow lukewarm in your faith. And here's this young adult, she's like 19 years old. And she said, you know what? If going to Afghanistan and dying a martyr's death is my way, I would rather go back to Afghanistan and die a martyr's death than possibly go to America and die a spiritual death into lukewarmness.
You have made the way for us to know you, a path that's straight and right. By the light of the world.
Today's edition of Light Up the Word has been in Genesis. Have you noticed the recurring themes mentioned in this opening book of the Bible? Pastor Ray's walking us through each situation and event, but what about the fact that it often seems like there are two brothers who are at odds? One is looked on favorably by God, and the other doesn't feel like he has God's blessing, so he takes matters into his own hands. This occurs with Cain and Abel, Jacob and Esau, Joseph and his brothers. There's something about the sin nature that seeks to gain acclaim one way or another. But if it's not what God has in mind, it leads to all kinds of heartache and destruction. So what's the lesson that we could learn from these stories that seem to repeat? God has his ways and reasons for doing what he does. But we could rest in the fact that perhaps what God's communicating is that it's not the firstborn lineage that matters, but it's that spiritual birth that comes later, through knowing Him, that really matters. That is what God can bless, and He desires to see your heart for Him grow and flourish. If that concept causes you to pause and think for a little bit, that's okay. While you're doing that, head over to lightoftheword.info. There you'll find lots of resources. This has been Light of the Word, illuminating the heart of God.
You have made